Well, good evening. It's another
Hello.
week.
Yeah, our last week of Memoir Madness. It's been fun,
It
but I'm
has.
also looking forward to us getting back to our other videos.
I know, I was gonna say we haven't checked in a while. How have you been? Are you tired? Are you happy? Are you grumpy? Are you hungry?
Freaking all of the above. I didn't even tell you last week that I got reprimanded at work.
Oh no.
I got
I
called in because my coworkers complained I was moody and not saying good morning to them, which I still think is bullshit. I shouldn't have to fake it and say good morning when I don't mean it. But I burst into tears and was crying in my boss's office for like 45 minutes.
well, I think that's petty. We are adults and you don't it, you're not ignoring somebody. Like
I
it,
absolutely agree.
why didn't they say good morning?
Or talk to me. Like, I respect honesty and upfrontness like so much. If I hurt your feelings, I want to know. But that never even happened. It went from like A to Z, and I was gobsmacked. Like, I was totally just like sideswept. I wasn't expecting that conversation at all. And it didn't help that I've been stopping smoking weed when I've been a daily smoker for over a decade. So I'm sure on top of that, and my husband's work hours getting cut, it was my mother-in-law fell and broke her hip. This all happened in 1 week. So it was just bound to happen. I'm just glad I didn't go postal.
I
And I didn't quit. I didn't
uh,
rage quit. So
And I have done that. I've gotten reprimanded and been like, you know what? Fuck you, and left.
right.
Like, because
Hmm.
sometimes it's just the cherry on top. Because if they think that you are close enough to expect a good morning, they should be close enough to ask you, are you okay?
Exactly.
That's petty
Yeah,
bullshit.
it was. And, I work in a very woman-dominated field, and I don't mean to be sexist, but I do notice that it's just harder working with so many women and so many big personalities.
I work in a woman-dominated field too. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel that. It's
Yeah,
just,
because you and I are just chill. We're genuinely nice people. And like, I do say good morning most of the time, but it wasn't even me like trying to be mean. It had nothing to do with them. It had to do with me like trying not to collapse in on myself like dying star.
and you've worked with your coworkers longer than I've worked with mine, and I had a couple off days, and my coworker that I worked with for like 2.5 months was like, "Are you okay? You seem upset or off or something."
Yeah.
And that's just frustrating. That I felt that I was telling you about all the things that were happening to me on Monday, and I was just like, "Can't I catch a break?"
Yeah, seriously.
Ugh. And then Tuesday didn't start better, but yes, I work for a new business, so it's not very busy. And I work alone, 12-hour days. And so yesterday my boss came by for a couple hours and just talked with me, and it made me feel better and it made me feel appreciated because she knows that it's
Hmm.
boring and I'm just sitting there by myself.
Yes.
So,
And you're such a people person, and you got into the job that you have because you like helping people. So not being busy, I can see how some people would love that, like just being able to be by themselves during the day and not have a bunch of work to do. But it has the opposite effect sometimes too, where you feel
yeah,
like, why am I wasting my time being here right now?
I know. And it doesn't help that out of the past 7 days, I've worked 6 of them, and 5 of them have been
Hmm.
12-hour shifts. And I
That's a
had
lot.
two patients in 6 days.
Yeah.
So I feel better.
Well,
Yeah, I will only work one day of the next seven. So I'm excited to get some rest and some me
hmm
time. And Ugh,
And you're like getting it on the ground floor and can lay the foundation for how things will continue to be. Like you're having a lot of say and stuff, and that's awesome.
yes, it really is. And the fact that they trust me to, you know, be unsupervised and know that I
Yeah.
can do it, even though I've only been there since the beginning of the year. And I know that they hired another person, but they're gonna put them with my coworker that works by themselves. Uh, because we used to work together and then somebody
Mm-hmm.
quit and now we both work by ourselves, but she is not very competent, so they're putting the new person with her. That is like she's
I'm
so
sure you're really
incompetent.
sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was working with her and I was not very, she's very nice, but she's just one of those people that we've talked about it. It's like older generations that just don't want to retain the knowledge of computers. And I'm like, how do you get into a
Mm-hmm.
field where you have to use computers and just say, you know, I'm bad with computers when you could fix that? You can learn anything.
Right? Oh, it's so frustrating. And I do admit, my boss asked me, "Did you say you work with idiots?" And I said, "Yes, I did." But I thought I was venting to someone I trusted. I didn't know she was going to run and tell people because I was frustrated that some of my coworkers just sit around for 15, 20 minutes and I have to stop my work to make them do their job. I don't get paid to do that. And I said, "Yes, I did."
Good. At least you didn't try to cover it up and you were honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shame on that person too.
Oh, yeah. She and I talked about it and she was very apologetic, but I'm like, damage is done. And she's like, "Well, I get over those things really quickly." I'm like, "Well, the person you were talking to didn't. And I just spent 45 minutes crying in so and so's office. So I'm glad you're over it."
The fact that she thought that you were bringing it up because you thought she was upset when she shouldn't have even said it. She just wanted to gossip. Like,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
uh,
But I learned my lesson. I'm not telling anybody anything anymore.
I have definitely done that, and sometimes it's easy to think that somebody's closer than they are, and it sucks when you
Mm-hmm.
find out that they're not the person you thought they were to you, and
Yep.
at least you won't make that mistake again.
Yeah, it's true. We can talk about the weather. Any good books you've read lately?
Oh, which yeah, there are so many good books out there. I've started like four. The one I'm reading right now is not really keeping my interest, so I brought another one to work, but
Good.
I have finished two this week.
I love that. I do feel like our memoir madness has rekindled my love of reading other stuff too. And we're ending with our memoir madness with a book that I really liked. I was looking back at my Goodreads and I finished this book in 2 days.
Wow, it was really good. I do want to say there is a trigger warning because we are talking about I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy, and there are mentions of eating disorders and physical and emotional abuse from a parent. And so I
And
just
even
wanted to put,
sexual.
yes, yes, I wanted to put that out there because I know that you know that when I was listening to this book, it put me in a very, very dark place.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished it in about 4 days listening to it, but it was just very heavy. It was very good, but it was very heavy.
Yeah, and you listened to it and you said Jennette McCurdy did the audiobook and that must have been very painful for her. And I just feel like it would make it harder to hear because I read the book and it was hard enough. And I haven't even gone through a lot of the things she's gone through, but it just made me sick to my stomach and, just hurt my psyche a little bit. And hearing it in her own words, I think probably would be harder.
Yes, but it was very good, and I hope that she got some type of closure and peace putting her story out there. And
Mm-hmm.
I I just hope the best for her. I actually watched iCarly. It was on when I was an adult. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
watching it in like 2010, so I already had a baby at that time, but and I didn't ever really watch a lot of kid shows, even when I was a kid. So the fact I really did like iCarly is kind of a fluke because I didn't watch any of the other Nickelodeon shows like Victorious or even the Disney Channel ones. So the fact that I had this parasocial relationship kind of with her, it hurt a little bit more because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
the person I was seeing on the TV was not the person that was, and I think that's true with a lot of actors and people in the media and social media, but it was just sad that her character was so happy and outrageous and she was dealing with all these other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna ask about that because I never really did watch iCarly. I actually watched a couple episodes after I read this book because I wanted to see her when she was younger and what it was like. But I kind of went into this book completely cold, not knowing her. And as I read it, I discovered I had seen her in some stuff that I just didn't know when she was a kid. But I was wondering what that was like for you being a fan of the show and then reading this book. Like, were you shocked? Did you know anything about her when you were watching the show? And
I
what is her character like? So, who did she play in iCarly?
She played Sam Puckett, and then she got the spin-off Sam and Cat with Ariana Grande, but played the same character that was just kind of like a loud class clown jokester that was like abrasive and kind of a bully, but like
Mm,
loved her friends, like and would even bully her friends to a jokish extent, I think. And
mm-hmm,
that's just, she had such a big personality on the show that you wouldn't have ever known that she had gone through this trauma or was continuing to go
wow.
through it. So it was very, very sad.
Yeah, so yeah, this book was intense and there was so much in the media about it before it was even released, which is how I heard about it and made me interested to read about it because she was so candid and honest. And to me, it really shows this book really shows what it's like to have a narcissistic parent
Yes. And
and how many people can relate to that.
probably a lot more people than are willing to admit it
Mm-hmm.
or don't even notice it because my mom was a narcissist and I fully believe that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And up until probably I don't know, 25, I thought it was, I thought we just were really close and best friends. And, we had this relationship that was better than everybody else's because we were so close. And
Mm-hmm.
around the time I was 25 was when I was like, okay, this doesn't feel right. Like, I feel like I'm being used. So a lot of people probably don't realize it,
Mm-hmm.
especially when that's how you grew up and you don't know anything different.
I did take a list. This is from the Mayo Clinic of symptoms of narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder, to be exact, just in case some of our listeners are lucky and haven't dealt with this, or maybe hearing this will light a light bulb a little bit and make you see that maybe you do have a narcissist in your inner circle. So I'll just read that and then we can talk more about her book. But people with the disorder can have unreasonably high sense of self-importance and require constant excessive admiration, feel that they deserve privileges and special treatment, expect to be recognized as superior even without achievements, make achievements and talents seem bigger than they are, Be preoccupied with fantasies about success, power, brilliance, beauty, or the perfect mate. Believe they are superior to others and can only spend time with or be understood by equally special people. Be critical of and look down on people they feel are not important. Expect special favors and expect other people to do what they want without questioning them. Take advantage of others to get what they want. Have an inability or unwillingness to recognize the needs and feelings of others. Be envious of others and believe others envy them. Behave in an arrogant way, brag a lot, and come across as conceited, and insist on having the best of everything. For instance, the best car or office.
That was very good to bring up. I didn't even think of that. You're so smart. Oh.
Well, only other smart, special people can understand me. No, just, I don't think we're narcissists, thank God.
No, but I do think that it's important to have those read because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, I don't think it was probably until I really started my own mental health journey at 27 that I really understood the wide spectrum of personality
Mm-hmm.
disorders. Because, growing up or even in daily life, some people are like, oh, that person's a psychopath,
Right.
and just throw that out there. And some people even do that with narcissists or narcissism. But I do
Mm-hmm.
think that there is some truth if you think somebody is a narcissist. There's
Mm-hmm.
probably a reason that's
And
on that
it's
list.
right. Because it's not all, it doesn't always come across as someone who's like really mean or really evil, right? Like it sounds like a lot of narcissism is kind of manipulative. It's more subtle. And like I know reading that list who comes to mind in my life, like there's a certain ex that I definitely think of. And I'm sure since you've already mentioned, you were like, my mom was that one, was that one? Check, check, check.
Yes. And
So
I think Jennette McCurdy, she starts her book talking about a memory of, I think, her seventh birthday. Maybe it was younger than that, like 4. But she
yeah, I think
says,
it was 6.
yeah, I was in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite right, but she says she remembers wishing that her mom would be there for another year because her mom had had cancer and she loved telling the story to everyone that she loved saying what kind of cancer she had and what she had gone through. And she did it in a way. Jennette McCurdy had said that her mom would make them sit down on Sunday nights and watch home videos she had made that from when she had cancer because she thought she was going to die for her kids and, you know, kind of blaming Jennette for not being more sad in the videos that her mom,
Yes.
and she was 2 when her mom had cancer.
Yeah,
So,
there were like videos of her in the hospital or like getting chemo. And
yeah,
she said her mom would talk about having cancer the way some people talked about going on vacations, like reminiscing in a happy way.
because when a narcissist is sick, they get the attention that they really,
Hmm.
really want. And it was just so sad that one, she talks about her early life and growing up in basically a hoarder house. Not basically, she says she grew up in a hoarding house where they couldn't even sleep in their bedrooms. They all slept on like foam mats in the living room because that was their rooms were so full of stuff.
Yeah, that was shocking to me. And I was so proud of her for being honest about that because that is really embarrassing. And especially to start acting so young, which she got into, she says, not because she wanted to do it, because her mom had always wanted to be an actress when she was a kid. And her mom was upset that she never got to do that. So she really wanted this for Jennette. So she was working and paying the bills from a very long young age. And I just can't imagine living this double life where you're going to sets and making more money than your parents are making. You're making money and now having to pay the electric bill and the rent and stuff and sleeping on a freaking exercise mat in the living room with your three brothers because there's so much shit piled in your bedroom.
She said her dad had worked at like Hollywood Video and Home Depot. Like he had
Yeah,
two
he had two
jobs.
jobs.
And let's be honest, those are not the best jobs, especially in the late 90s for pay. Now
And in
pay is,
California.
yeah, pay is getting better, but they also lived with her grandparents and her grandfather worked at Disneyland, but her mom did not work because she homes she was homeschooled, wasn't she? And she was Mormon.
Yep. All
Eh,
they were Mormon and they were all homeschooled. Even before she started acting, I think they were homeschooled, but it became more of so that she could take Jennette to auditions and classes and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
her education wasn't very good either.
because how productive can learning be when you're sitting in a horde?
Right. How can you concentrate?
And she talked about, I can't remember what show she had gotten paid from, but she had convinced her mom to let her get a bunk bed and put it in the room that had been her room. And she said, over time, she ended up not being able to sleep in there because the horde took back over. And that is so sad. She
It
was
was
making
so sad.
making the money for her family, paying the bills, and finally got her own bed and then being kicked out of the bed because of stuff. I know I have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff, but my son's room is his. Everything in it is his. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not anywhere near a hoarder. I just have a lot of knickknacks everywhere. But
Yeah. That part made me sad too. Like it was a Sprint commercial. So she got this big commercial and she said after paying the bills, her mom actually let her pick something. And lots of kids with a few $100s, they would want an Xbox or maybe like a really nice bike or something like that. But all this little girl wanted was a bunk bed. She just wanted to not have to sleep on the floor. And she said from the moment they put it up, she got the bottom bunk, even though she wanted the top bunk because her mom put stuff on the top bunk. And like you said, it just slowly started to seep. And eventually that bed was so covered in stuff that she couldn't even sleep in the bed that she worked for. So crushing.
it is, oh, my heart just hurts so much for her when she was telling her stories. One that sticks out, she was probably a, like a preteen, and she talked about her mom was in the hospital for something. I don't think her cancer had come back at that point, but she wrote like a screenplay or something, and she was so excited to show her mom, and her mom was like, "Well, I hope you don't like writing more than you like acting. Writers are fat."
I forgot about that.
And she was like young, like seven, maybe 10. And she had bought the computer for her
Right?
family and she typed up and she was so excited to show her mom and just being crushed. Like, because she talks about how even now she wants to be a writer or a director. She doesn't want to act, but she still wants
Mm-hmm.
to do creative things and just to know that's in your heart, but to feel like you don't have a choice of what you can do.
Mm-hmm. And also, her mom was a terrible, abusive person to her, but she loved her mom. That story you're talking about on her birthday, I think that was how the book opened, which I thought was a great way to open it because, yeah, she says it was her birthday. She opened up her present. It was like a Minnie Mouse outfit or something that she didn't like. She didn't want to wear it and she felt it it just wasn't her style. But even at 6 years old, she felt it was her job to make her mom happy. So she pretended to like it. And I didn't save a lot of quotes from this book, but I did save this one. And she said, Mom's watching me, watching her. And that's how it always is. We're always connected, intertwined. And so going to your best friend, the person you love more than anyone else in the world, with this special thing that you spent all this time on, and then just to be blown off, like that's crushing. It changes who you are.
Does she also talked about how she knew how to gauge the situation with her mom and would try to please her mom in every way. She talked about her parents getting in a horrific fight and her mom like getting in like pulling a kitchen knife on her dad, and Jennette was trying to be like, I love you, mommy, I love you, trying to get her attention
Mm-hmm.
away and calm her down. And she always felt like that was she didn't understand why her brothers did not do the same thing, like, you know, try not to make messes and say the right things and say that they needed her, when Jennette said that she knew how her mom was going to react before it happened, and she would try to change the course of how the reaction was going to go. And that's just so much pressure. I feel that. Oh, I felt that part a lot of just
Mm-hmm.
trying to make things better.
Mm-hmm.
And for a child, oh, it's just so heartbreaking because I know there's nothing that you can do really, but you learn, what not to do.
Yes. And that's a big traumatic response, that we know, like being hyper vigilant, like being so aware of everything that's going on around you. And I can't remember what psychologists call it today, but it's kind of like where you're trying to predict the future and trying to keep bad things from happening. Like it falls on your shoulders. And that is an immense amount of pressure. And it's just not fair that any kid should have to go through that. And just shame on the adults, for putting that on her.
Yeah, because there were other adults in her life, like her father, which I'm just going to bring this up now since I brought it up. After her mom died, her father told her he was not her father.
Mm-hmm.
And that is traumatic no matter what age you are.
Right. And
So,
she says she always felt growing up that they weren't as close. She wasn't as close with her dad. And she thought it was just because she was so close with her mom and her mom and dad had such a terrible relationship. Plus her dad was working two jobs and wasn't there a lot. Um, but it in retrospect, it was probably hard for him to bond with her,
yeah.
knowing that wasn't his kid.
And I think Jeanette and she had three brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I think the oldest one was her father's, but not the other two and Jeanette. They were another man's.
Oh, I forgot about that. I think you're right, though.
And not only did her father, the man who raised her, and the grandparents that lived with her, they let all this stuff happen also. Nobody
Mm-hmm.
ever tried to stop her mom from letting this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
that
think
is,
she mentions her grandpa tried once, like, you're being too hard on her. She has too much pressure. Like, we're worried about her. And her mom just frickin' went off on him. And, you know, her mom was in a position of power in everyone in the family. She would kick her dad out, like you said, chase him out with a knife, and literally lock him out of the house for days. And her grandparents had nowhere else to go.
yeah, and it was like his house. Like
Yeah, it was
his parent,
his family
yeah.
house.
And she would just, she hoarded it and like kicked him out. And then eventually, when Jeanette got old enough and got her own apartment closer to the Nickelodeon studio, her mom basically moved in with her. Like, even though Jennette wanted her own space, she just didn't know how to tell her mom no. And I feel that. Like, just
Yeah.
wanting your own space and you have it, and then somebody else kind of comes in and just you're their kid, so they think that they can treat your home like theirs or that it's
Mm-hmm.
theirs and you're living with them. And
And even her bed, when her mom would stay at her apartment, she would sleep in Jeanette's bed. So imagine being 19, 20, and not even getting to sleep in your own bed after sleeping on the this bitch's floor for 18 years.
because her mom took the couch.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
oh,
sad.
I
She
know.
said she like would be in a frenzy on Sunday mornings, like getting everybody awake, making sure her brothers had breakfast ready, and trying to get them all dressed and out the door so they would get to church on time because church was the only 3 hours a week where she got to get out of her house, her messy house, because it was so stressful for her, even as a kid.
And she says that she loved going to church as a kid. That was, like you said, the only time that she was happy, truly,
Mm-hmm.
was when she was at church. And the more roles she started getting, the less they started going to church because some people didn't agree with the role she was taking. And also, around that time is when she started developing anorexia and getting very thin, and people started to notice and bring it up. And I think her mom just tried to act like those people didn't exist anymore because they had something else to keep her time occupied. Instead of going to church, she had Jennette's acting career, and she didn't want to answer to those people because she knew it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That she was
Yeah.
having Jennette take, all these different classes, ballet, tap, jazz, hip hop, on top of like vocal lessons. And she had so many lessons, and her mom was still basically like, oh, you can't eat that, or, you know, you're gonna get fat at from a very
Mm-hmm.
young age. And it's something I don't think the book she has gotten help for it, but I think she still struggles with her eating disorders. And that's so sad that it started so young because it's so hard on your whole body.
Yeah, her eating disorders were a very big part of the book. And, like, yes, eating disorders can develop, but I feel like in this case, it's almost like it was taught to her because she was talking about how she was getting pretty steady jobs. She hadn't gotten huge roles from like 8 to 10, 8 to 11. And when she was 12, her body started to change. And she told her mom she was really scared and that they were both worried she wasn't going to get cast as a young girl anymore. And she asked her mom, like, how can I stop from growing older? Not only, I feel like Jennette's mom was more worried about the roles, whereas Jennette herself was more worried about not being mommy's little girl anymore. And she thought if, she becomes a teenager that her mom wouldn't love her as much. So her mom started teaching her how to calorie restrict and said they would order like Nutrisystem meals, which, are very low calorie meals, and they would split one. So they would take like a 300-calorie dinner and split it. Or they would each have half a popsicle or, just a bowl of lettuce, no dressing or anything like that. And her mom encouraged it all. They were like partners in crime. They did it together. And looking at pictures of her mom was very thin. And I don't think it was due to her cancer. I think it was due to her mom's own disordered eating. But to put that on your daughter, it changed the whole course of her life in a very bad way. And that was just one of the few boundaries her mom crossed in a terrible way. Like she tells about this audition she went to at 8 years old where she really had to go to the bathroom. And she didn't want to tell the casting directors or anything that she needed to go to the bathroom because she didn't want to be seen as difficult. Because, oftentimes children of narcissistic parents don't want to put anyone out or feel like they're being an inconvenience to anyone. So she held it as long as she could until she was like about to wet herself and finally said, "I'm so sorry. Can I please go to the bathroom?" And she said she's just sitting on the toilet crying, telling her mom sorry as her mom wiped her because her mom wiped her ass and stuff until she was a teenager.
She talks about showering with her brother when she was 8 and he was 16, that her mom bathed them because
I,
they
I
weren't
think she was
able.
older than 8, honestly.
Yeah, I can't remember, but he was 16. I remember that part.
Mm-hmm.
And she was maybe 10 or 12, I think, older than
Yep,
8,
she said her mom showered her and like washed her body until she was 13 or 14.
with her brother because they weren't.
Terrible.
Her mom said that they were not able to clean themselves properly, or she needed to
Mm-hmm.
check for cancer, so she would, examine their bodies for cancer. And Jennette wanting to please her mom because her mom had been through cancer, and Jennette saw it as this like terrible thing and that her mom had overcome it, which I'm not minimalizing cancer. I'm
No,
minimalizing the actions that this woman did to her children
of course.
while saying it was because that's what she had gone through and she didn't want her children to go through that. So I just wanted to clarify that so nobody could use the words against me.
Of course. That was the most disturbing part of the book to me was she said her mom would give her weekly breast and vaginal examinations and said she was checking for cancer. And I don't know what to think about that. Like, did her mom actually think she was checking for cancer, even though she'd never gone to medical school and didn't know how to do any of that stuff and was doing it on a child who would very likely not have cancer, especially reproductive organ cancer? Or was her mom like pedophilic? I don't know.
I think it was mainly, I don't know this woman, but I think it was mainly a control thing that she wanted to feel in control of every aspect of her children's lives. And that was just part of it. And it doesn't make it any less wrong if it's not a sexual way. It's still very wrong. But I don't necessarily think it was sexual. I think it was a power thing.
Mm. Well, they say most rape is not about sex, right? It is about
Yeah,
power.
that's
Ugh, it's
very
terrible.
true. And who knows what she did to her sons? She had 3 sons, so who knows if she
Mm-hmm.
was checking them for cancer, or, I mean, I'm sure since she was bathing them too.
Jeez. I mean, I haven't been in that situation, so it's just so hard for me to wrap my head around, but I just can't imagine being 13 and someone trying to give me a shower.
Or somebody trying to wipe my butt.
Yes. It's degrading, and maybe that is part of it is like, like you said, the power of getting them to do that.
And feeling like, if you're obviously at some point in your children's lives, you have to teach them how to wipe and wash their hair and their
Right?
bodies. So I think by not letting them learn at an early age, they're dependent on her and they can't be anywhere without her. And then as they get older, it's, especially in Jennette's case, it was a power move where she was made to believe that she needed her mom and that if she stood up for herself, there would be disastrous repercussions emotionally
Mm-hmm.
for her.
Yeah, her mom also like was so concerned with how Jennette looked. And especially narcissistic parents, but I think especially narcissistic mothers often see their children as an extension of themselves, right? I was watching this terrible YouTube video because when I was depressed, I went on like a true crime spree. And there was this mother who ended up trying to kill her three children she had two daughters and a son. And one daughter she really liked because her daughter was cute and reminded her of herself. And her other daughter she thought was hideous, like ugly and embarrassing. And she treated that daughter a lot differently. And I think Jennette's mom really did see Jennette's accomplishments and achievements as proof that she was a great mom. And like if people called her daughter beautiful, then they were calling her beautiful too because I made her. And so from a very young age, she was dyeing Jennette's hair and dyeing her eyelashes and dressing her in inappropriate clothes. She tells the story of um auditioning for Grey's Anatomy as a hermaphrodite character, which is kind of interesting and also weird. Like, how do you explain that to your child that that's what they're auditioning for? Like, that's just weird in general.
I
But
know what
basically,
episode that is, though.
you do
Yes.
dressed her up like kind of like a prostitute, like boots and short skirt. And Jennette says and all this makeup. And Jennette says she knew she was walking into that audition making a fool of herself and that she wasn't going to get it, but she couldn't talk back to her mom. She couldn't say that, or yeah, like you said, she would get in trouble. And it's not just about like being hit and stuff, which sometimes she was. It was about being berated verbally, like the whole car ride home and everything I've done for you, and just dragging you through the mud.
It's so hard. And I still have, I still, as an adult, I get very defensive when I feel like somebody's questioning my decisions or my choices because I didn't really have that autonomy growing up that now I'm like, I'm an adult, I know what I'm doing. But also, my mother was the same way that, so I try to reel it in and I try to understand where somebody's coming from if they question me because my mom was one of those people like, I don't have to explain myself to anyone. And I don't believe that that's always the case, but if very quickly I'll get defensive, especially in my relationship with my husband if I feel like he is I take it as a direct like attack on my character. If he's like the house is messy, I'm like, oh, oh, like what? Like so it lives with you for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to get over the not get over those things, but learning how to deal with those emotions is very
Mm-hmm.
hard but rewarding because I feel like I can communicate better with the people in my life and not get so defensive all the time, which is something I had a lot of problems with in my early 20s, like after I'd gotten married and wasn't living with my mom because I was finally away from her. So I was able to kind of figure out who I was as a person.
Do you feel like when you left the home and started your own family, did it feel hard to make decisions?
Oh, yes. It's very hard for me to make decisions,
Mm-hmm.
but especially because I got married very young. I got married at 18, and I have said this to my husband, but I said I would have gotten married to the first person that asked. I was
Mm-hmm.
so desperate to be out of that situation that I was in with my
Mm-hmm.
mom that I needed to be out. And I'm so
Well,
glad it was
that's
my
natural.
husband. I'm so happy it
Mm-hmm.
was my husband. Not that it's been easy, but it's been worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it would have been worth it with anyone else that I had known at that time. So,
Yeah, you're lucky that you didn't get into like a bad relationship because Jennette mentions that she did, right? Um,
Yes.
like she didn't date as a teenager really, but she ended up having a music career, which I knew nothing about, and went on tour. Was it like country music or was she
Yeah,
just in Tennessee?
it was country mu I think it was like early Taylor Swift kind of music.
And
Like,
I think her mom's cancer had come back at the time. So it was the first time she was not under her mom's thumb. She was in a different state and going on like tour buses and stuff and had this freedom for the first time. And I believe it was someone in the band or just someone working closely with her that she first started trying to date. But it was almost like she was kind of emotionally immature
yeah,
and just didn't know how to have a relationship with him. So that kind of fizzled out. But she ended up meeting this guy named Steven. And I don't know what you know. Is that his real name?
I don't know either.
I'm going to look it up.
I do know that he was quite a bit older than her at the time. She was in her very early 20s and he was in his mid 30s. And that's
Yeah.
a big age gap for somebody that's never been in a serious relationship.
So Jennette McCurdy's mom died in 2013. I didn't realize that. So Jennette McCurdy was only 21 when her mom died. And it took her all that time to heal and write this book. So she might even have been like 19 when she was dating this guy. Um,
Yeah.
let's see.
How
In the
old is
book,
she
she called
now?
him, she was born in 92, so
Oh, so she's
30, 31.
she'll be 31 this year
Okay.
in June.
In the book, he was called Stephen, and I'm not sure if that's his real name, but it sounded like someone she had met while she was working. And like you said, he was much older than her. Um, and pressured her into sex because she was a virgin and an ex-Mormon. Um, and that he had a drug problem and a drinking problem, and she started drinking by being around him. And that's when her anorexia kind of turned into binge drinking and eating and purging. Um, but like he pressured her into sex and they had this secret relationship because she was so afraid of her mom finding out. And they went to Hawaii one year. She said they wrapped up iCarly and the producers gave everyone like a free week at this really nice hotel in Hawaii. So she took him and paparazzi saw them on the beach and she was so scared because she knew that as soon as it was in the press, her mom was going to find out. And her mom did and sent her all of these terrible text messages. She kept calling and calling, and Jennette wouldn't answer. So she kept texting, calling her whore, and she was a disappointment and all this stuff. And then had the audacity at the end to say, P.S. Send money. Our fridge is broken.
Oh my God.
Infuriating.
It is. Oh my gosh, because when you do better than your narcissistic parent in life, they expect to have those same rewards of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just so classic that her mom would berate her and then expect something at the end.
Mm-hmm. Because they see it like, you owe me. I gave you life. You'd be nothing without me.
I didn't ask to be born,
Right?
especially. I was actually thinking about that when I was reading Spare, Prince Harry's book. I was like, what a crazy thing to think that some people are born princes and some people are born to, you know,
Crackheads.
yes, like
Mm-hmm.
how is there such a vast difference in babies, like
Mm-hmm.
it just I can't even like put into words like what it is and how it blows my mind that just that it can happen like that and it's all chance that we were born to the parents that we were born to.
I agree. It's crazy because in theory, we're all just born innocent with limitless potential, but we're not born equal,
No, because
even if we're made equal.
we don't we don't all have the same opportunities. And
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about this like there's like yeah, it would be cool to learn how to play instruments, but now in our 30s like we didn't have that growing up. Like it was just not a part of our life. And so now like at 30, why would it be? Just to buy a French horn, you know? Like
See, I do think it would have been easier if we were kids, but I don't let that stop me. I've bought several instruments in my 20s and 30s, and am I great at playing them? No. But I do believe in nourishing my inner child and allowing myself to learn new things and not telling myself I'm too old because nobody can tell me no now. Nobody can tell me we can't afford it or we don't have time or how are you going to get there. I can do those things for myself now. But
exactly.
you are totally right that kids who don't have those things are at a disadvantage and have to spend more time catching up later in life.
Yeah, I mean, I was never going to get a scholarship for playing an instrument or doing a sport because we couldn't afford instruments or sports. And by the
Mhm.
time
Right.
you're in high school, it's almost too late to start playing as well to get a scholarship at a scholarship level. I
Mhm.
mean, I think we know somebody that did get a scholarship that started in high school, but most of the time, I don't think that people just start freshman year and are good enough by senior year to get a full scholarship anywhere.
Yes. I think a couple episodes ago I talked about a Jonah Hill movie I saw recently called You People, where it's about his white Jewish family clashing with his fiance's black family, black Muslim family, and the parents were having dinner and kind of talking about the inequalities, and the Jewish mom was like, "No, like we can understand. Jews have been persecuted for years. I mean, you have no idea how hard my husband worked to be an optometrist." And the other mom was like, and what did his father do? Well, he was a doctor and his grandfather and and kind of just showed how, well, yeah, but who your parents are and what they give you does help set you up. It doesn't mean you don't have to work hard, but it's different
And I
when
think
you're
it,
not struggling to survive.
yeah, and I think it is, that's exactly it. You, because you can put forth the effort to
Mm-hmm.
hone the skill instead of putting the effort into other, uh, other people's emotions and, not knowing if the lights were going to stay on.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it boils down to being a kid. You have time
Yes.
to be a kid. And don't get me wrong, there are parents that are abusive towards their children in sports. I have
Mm-hmm. Oh
definitely seen
yeah.
that, especially with football or wrestling. There's a lot of
Terrible.
that, but
Baseball.
yes, but also a majority of the kids are just allowed to be kids and enjoy the things that they're able to do. It helps set them up in the long run.
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah. And to just a little more about her boyfriend, Steven, after he pressured her into having sex with him and um basically blew up her relationship with her mom because her mom found out, then he does like a 180 and becomes a born again Christian and says he wants to be celibate and thinks he is Jesus Christ reincarnated. And she said this was kind of like the rock bottom where she looked at her life and was like, I need to get out of here. This is totally unhealthy and crazy. And they were doing like drugs and drinking. I don't know if she was doing drugs, but she was definitely binge drinking a lot. Um, and tried to go to therapy. So she goes to this therapist that she calls Laura. I don't know if that's really her name, but part of me wishes she would drop this therapist's name because this therapist was trying to get her to see that her relationship with her mom was really unhealthy, which I think Jennette wasn't really ready to acknowledge at this point. She more wanted help with her binge drinking and binge purge eating disorder. And so her therapist says, well, I know you have this award ceremony coming up where you have to present, and it's going to be really hard for you because Jennette said there's always lots of food and lots of alcohol. And her therapist says, no problem. I'll go with you. I'm going to be there to support you. And so she does her, presents this award and goes backstage and is like having a full blown panic attack. And her therapist is across the room, like chatting up celebrities, completely starstruck and like not even seeing Jennette. And Jennette said she just went straight to the buffet and started scarfing down these slider burgers. And her therapist finally saw her and saw how distressed she was and like said, okay, let's go. But I'm like, how did it even get to that point? Shame on her therapist. Like, you finally ask for help, which is super hard. It's super hard to start therapy, especially if you've never done it before. And then to kind of be ditched when you needed her the most.
Because that therapist was her plus one to this event, should have been waiting right behind the curtain for her to get off
Mm-hmm.
stage because she knew that
Yep.
that was the hardest part, was the presenting for her.
Yes.
And yeah, shame on her. Like, I mean, yeah, I'm sure it's really cool to see Dwayne The Rock Johnson, but also you can't, you're supposed to be a professional and you put yourself in this professional setting to where you're supposed to be helping somebody and then you get completely sidetracked.
Mm-hmm. Like, how
And
could she ever trust you again?
oh, and then I'm sorry, but I feel like if that happened to me, I would feel used.
Yes.
And I can't put words in her mouth, but she probably felt that way too. And now I didn't know her mom had died 10 years ago.
Right?
She was very young. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
I was at that place at that point in my life at 21, knowing the things about my mom that I know now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would have been defensive about it, even though I had started seeing signs, like, oh, that was really messed up. But it was still like, oh, that's just my mom. Like, she didn't mean it, or, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And as an adult, I'm like, no, a person that claims to love you more than anything would not do those things to you or say those things to you. And
Mm-hmm.
but at 21, it's just so hard. You're like an adult and you can do all these things, but there's still so, I sound so old saying it, but there's still so much to learn and to
Mm-hmm.
understand about life and the people that you love. And I feel like you are very naive at 21, no matter how much life experience you have. I mean, by the time I turned 21, I was married for a couple of years and had a baby. And now looking back, I'm like, I didn't know anything. Like, what was I doing? Like, just
Yeah.
being out in the world, like, taking care of another human.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, it's really hard. And I just really feel for her. And like you said, it was just heartbreaking hearing her read it because there wasn't a lot of emotion. It was how you would listen to any other book being read. And I think it probably took a long time to record that because it was so well done. I think
Mm-hmm.
that, maybe there were parts that she had to re-record, or I don't want to say she sounded emotionless, but it was just matter of fact. She was telling her story, and I think when it is your story, it's hard to be matter of fact. So big props to her
Mm-hmm.
for that.
Definitely. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with this or if it is true, but I have heard it said before that when you can tell your story without getting emotional, it means you have healed. And it also could just be she has done the work. And it's also powerful, to be completely honest and not protect the people that have hurt you.
Very
To
true.
say, this is my story and I own it and I am going to tell it and I'm not going to keep your secrets. I'm not going to protect your image.
That's so true. And
Yeah.
it takes it took her 10 years to get there, but
Yeah.
which gives me hope that someday I'll
Mm-hmm.
be able, it's only been a little over a year-ish, but
Mm-hmm.
that eventually, not that she doesn't still feel the pain of it or the hurt, but to be able to say that, this is my story and I don't care who knows it, and I'm not going to be ashamed that these things happen to me. And I think that's really important.
I think so too. And I think I've seen so many reviews of just average people who weren't even in the Hollywood scene who can relate to it. And I think it's a testament to how, when you do share your story, like what's that quote? The things you're going through now someday might be somebody else's survival guide.
That's
You
really,
know, she's
yeah,
helping other people, and that's really important.
it is.
There's another scene like it's a movie, but it's not. But there was another part story she shared that really stuck with me where her mom's cancer had come back and it had actually metastasized to her brain in tumors. So her mom was having seizures, which the doctor said was really common with brain tumors, but it put her in a coma. And she'd been in a coma for a week at this point, and Jennette was really upset. And she went to Burger King and she said she just pigged out. Like she got a bunch of burgers and fries and shake and just ate it all until she was really stuffed and she tried to throw up and she couldn't that time. And so she felt was already feeling bad about herself. And she gets a phone call that her mom woke up. So she rushes back to the hospital. And one of the first things her mom says to her was like, she was so disappointed in her for eating Burger King. And that when her mom slipped into her final coma in hospice and was going to die, one of the things Jennette whispered to try to get her out of the coma was like something like, Mom, I've lost so much weight, or something. Do you recall that?
Yeah, she's like, I'm finally down to 97 pounds.
Yes,
That
because
was
she
her
thought it
mom's,
would make her mom so excited that she'd wake up. And that
that,
was so sad.
yeah, that was her mom's goal weight for her was 97 pounds. And it makes me sick.
Mm-hmm.
But also, no, there's nothing else. It just makes me sick.
Yeah,
Ugh, that somebody could be so wrapped up in an image of an image that you almost died, and that's the first thing you say to somebody.
right. And she said something like, well, I didn't get mayo on it, like trying to make her mom not so mad.
And
But
mayo at Burger King is the best part. What's the point?
terrible.
I know.
Well, and when you starve your child for years, like it often will turn into binge eating because their body is starving. Like, what did she expect to happen?
And
It's not Jennette's fault.
no, and also, I think we talked about this when we talked about Naya Rivera. Sometimes eating disorders, I think with Jeanette's bulimia, it manifested. as more of a control thing, where I think the anorexia
Mm-hmm.
was instilled in her, but
Mm-hmm.
she could control like the binging and purging. And
You're so right.
I think that she didn't have to starve herself. She found out that she could eat
Yep.
these things and then she could have her cake and eat it too, so to speak, about
You're right.
and still try to, please her mom
Yep.
by
And she
staying
only
thin.
did it when her mom wasn't around.
Oh, I know. Oh, so sad. I know I keep saying that, but
It is.
another thing that made me really sad and upset, and this is not at the person I'm talking about. I'm not upset at this person. I'm upset at the creators and the adults around, even though they were adults at this time. When they were on Sam and Cat, they would not let Jennette go off and do other things instead of filming, like hosting award shows or, doing a concert for her singing. But Ariana Grande was able to do those things and they would, write the show around that. But they wouldn't do the same for Jennette, and that really upset me. But that's not Ariana
Mm-hmm.
Grande's fault. That's Nickelodeon's fault.
Yeah, because per her contract, she had to get their permission to do anything outside of that show. But she does mention how they kind of strung her along for a long time, saying, we're going to teach you behind the scenes stuff. We're going to let you be a producer and director for a couple episodes. And that she kept asking, when am I going to do this? And it was supposed to happen. And they kind of pulled the rug out from under her feet. And it was like she couldn't come straight out and say it, but they said someone threatened to leave the show if you do. And she highly insinuated that was Ariana.
Yeah, I guess that's true, and that's petty if it is true, but she didn't come out and say it,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't bring it up. But, it should be brought up. But I do
And she
feel,
does say that some of her problem with Ariana was kind of jealousy because it was supposed to be her spinoff, right? Like Sam and Kat, like she was on Carly. Ariana wasn't.
well, she was on
Um,
another Nickelodeon show.
oh, was she?
Yeah, it was like Victorious that it was called.
Oh, yeah.
And Kat was the character from that, and they merged the two. But
Oh, I didn't know that.
she had talked about the creator. What's his fucking name?
Dan fucking Schneider.
Yes, and she didn't
Come
call
for
him out.
us
Yeah, she didn't say his name in the book. She just called him the creator.
with
But
capitals.
yes, but everybody at this point knows that Dan Schneider was the creator of these shows and how toxic he was to these child actors.
Mm-hmm.
But he had told her that she was getting her own show
Mm-hmm.
and that,
As he took her out to dinner, is pressuring her to drink underage, saying all the other actors do it, and then he's massaging her shoulders as he's telling her about this show that he could give a spin-off to anybody, but he chose her, and she should be so grateful. Ugh,
I hate,
disgusting.
oh, oh, that's another person abusing power in her life because she talks about how, you know, nobody wanted her first kiss ever was on screen with her co-star from iCarly and how she was upsetting him because she couldn't get it right and how people were like afraid of him and basically
The
at the
creator.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and how basically towards the end of the show they he wasn't fired at that time, but he had to sit like in a room by himself away from other people and watch it being shot. Like he couldn't be around other people because he was so horrible to other people.
Yes, he
And
had to
then
direct like through a microphone that would go to the stagehands to give them direction. He wasn't
yeah,
allowed to talk to the actors anymore, which is probably a good thing.
yeah, but she said like a, a there would be a like a switch that would flip and he would make you feel like the most special person in the world and like you were the most talented and that's just so disgusting that he
Mm-hmm.
was able to go on like that for a long fucking time.
Yeah, I've seen some really terrible videos that he himself has taken of like it looked like he was trying to look up Ariana Grande's skirt, like when they were sitting around between scenes and stuff, and like how he would make them do weird stuff with their feet because he has a foot fetish, and how
Yeah,
many foot scenes there are in the shows.
in iCarly and Victorious, there's like a one of them like putting their feet in peanut butter or something. I can't remember exactly
Mm-hmm.
what it is, but they all did it, and I'm just like, ugh, like, and they put this on TV for other kids, and even
Mm-hmm.
I was an adult when I was watching it. Was didn't even think I was like, oh, that's weird, but I didn't think it was gross. But now knowing that,
Yeah, because they add a laugh track and like it's all brightly colored. Yeah, it's almost like brainwashing. And
yeah,
he would even post stuff on his Twitter like write Sam and Cat on your foot and send me a picture. And like he would post some like it was a contest. And so all these random kids that love the show were sending him pictures of his feet.
ugh,
Yeah. I'll
and that was
I'll
like on
I'll
a
find a picture. Oof.
public platform, and people were just letting this creepy old man. I'm not sorry, Dan Schneider. Like
Exactly.
you're creepy.
Yep.
Like
We can say it. It's America. It's our opinion.
you don't know me, and I don't know you. Like come for me, bro.
He looks like he ate Shane Dawson from 2007 and Justin Bieber.
He what?
He looks like he ate Shane
Oh.
Dawson circa 2007 and Justin Bieber.
I missed the first part. I was like, what did he do with Shane Dawson and Justin Bieber?
He's got like the haircut and it's so cringe because he's so old and fat.
Does he
Ugh,
still have the haircut? I know
I
he's
don't
not working at
know.
Nickelodeon, but
I
maybe he's
haven't
still.
seen a recent pic,
Ugh.
but what a creep. Yeah, I feel really bad for all the young people who had to work in his vicinity.
Yeah, here's a YouTube video called Every Creepy Sign About Dan Schneider That We Failed to Notice.
Mm-hmm.
But he also created Drake and Josh, The Amanda Show, all
Mm-hmm.
that.
Oh man, all that? I didn't know
I
that.
don't know if he created all that, but he was a producer on it. Hold on.
Wow.
He was a
Dan,
writer on all that and a executive producer.
oh,
Was
go ahead.
credited on the iCarly reboot on Paramount Plus, but credit only as creator.
Mm, but that probably means he's getting money from it, which still sucks.
And it looks like up until 2018, he was executive producer on shows for Nickelodeon.
Yeah, Nickelodeon has lots of messed up stuff. It's not just them. I saw a video on the Ren and Stimpy creators and some sick stuff he was involved in too. And almost feel like there's this group of people in Nickelodeon. Don't come for me, Nickelodeon. This is my opinion, who say they're doing one thing, but behind to make people happy and say, yeah, we don't agree with this. But in secret, behind the scenes, they actually are. Like these people are still getting paid, they're still involved. Their name just might not be on it anymore.
And I'm pretty sure that's happened on the Disney Channel too.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
They
it's not
probably
just
just have
Nickelodeon,
better
but
lawyers and can
yeah.
hide it better.
Ugh. We could
Terrible.
probably do a whole podcast on children's TV and the drama and the controversy around different children's children's television.
We just might have to.
about, you know, it. There's so much because
Mm-hmm.
we talked about this when we did our 1990s podcast, I think, where I love Seventh Heaven and all the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that ended up coming out about that. And I would say it might not be exactly children's TV, but it's family television, and I think that's the same thing.
Definitely.
I don't think
Mm-hmm.
I think that iCarly and those shows are family television, not just, I think
Mm-mm.
kid shows are more like the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
Right. Yeah, Blue's Clues, that kind of thing.
Yes.
I agree.
Things that teach you how
One,
to count and shapes and colors.
yeah. One good thing that at least came out of iCarly is she did say she and Miranda Cosgrove became really good friends.
It's not because of Miranda Cosgrove, it's just because she put out this like really terrible song after like iCarly ended and it was really terrible. So I hate that song. So I shouldn't say I
I've
don't like
never
her.
heard it. I've
Uh,
never heard it. What did it go like?
it's uh, it was a terrible music video too. I don't know why I watched it. Let me
Well,
look.
you were a fan of the show.
Yeah, but I also didn't know that Jennette McCurdy had a music career, so
Me either. Well, and it sounds like Nickelodeon didn't want us to know.
yeah.
I do feel like Miranda Cosgrove has a certain air about her that reminds me of like Leah Michele or Anne Hathaway, where they're just like perfect and had this perfect family and great life and awesome career, and they're just the perfect workers, do what they're told, never say a bad word about anyone. And doesn't mean they're bad people, but I think it's a natural reaction to just not like them or not trust them or think they're fake, even if they're not. It's just an air about them.
I think that's it because I already talked about not liking Anne Hathaway. But I just had a thought pop into my head. It made me remember how she was talking about Ariana Grande, which also happened to pop up in Naya Rivera's book too. So maybe Ariana Grande is not as good of a person as I think she is.
Remind me about what Naya said.
About how she was still engaged to Big Sean at the time, and he did not want Naya to come over to his house, and she was like, "I have a key, bitch, like I'm coming." And she walked in, and Ariana Grande was at his house, and he basically said nothing was happening, but after they broke up, him and Ariana Grande started dating.
I see. Yeah, she might not be a nice person. I think she's beautiful and she's a good singer, but Jeanette said some of her dislike of her might even have been jealousy because she was working on the set and then going home to her hoarder house and her crazy fucking family, whereas Ariana grew up in a really rich, idyllic life in Florida and had all these opportunities, right? So that is hard, especially when you're still young and still living in your hell, you know?
Yeah. And I do think Ariana is very talented and she works very hard, and I don't think she deserved being blamed for Mac Miller's death. I love Mac Miller too,
Mm-mm.
but you you can't blame somebody else for somebody's addiction. And
No.
I think it's all very sad, and I know that she was very heartbroken over it, and it's just very sad. But I'm also not a celebrity, and I don't know what it's like to have to be that competitive with so
Mm-mm.
many other people that are just as talented as you are and trying to stand out and doing the hustle of, doing multiple gigs at once. So I
Or
want to give
feeling
her,
like you have to kiss ass to make producers and writers happy.
yes. So
That would
I
be
want to
hard too.
give her that grace also. So I'm not saying I think she's a terrible person. I just thought it was a funny coincidence that she was brought up in two of the memoirs we talked about.
It is a funny coincidence. Yeah. Well, this book kind of wraps up with her mom dies and the feelings that followed, which I think at first was a lot of numbness and not really knowing what to do. And then she does say she tried therapy again and started with an eating disorder clinic to try to get that under control first. And like you said, it's kind of unclear if she really healed that or if it is something she still struggles with and will continue to struggle with. But it at least opened the doors for her to start seeing the unhealthy way she was raised and to start healing in that aspect. And I think this book probably made huge strides. And she says she got a role on this Netflix show. I can't even remember what it was because she said once she like had signed the contract and was filming it, she was embarrassed. Like she didn't want people to see it and she felt like she was stuck. So when her lawyers and agent told her that it had been canceled, she was relieved and she kind of used that as like an exit and as a way to not act anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was either. I can't. It said she was on the Eric Andre show was the last time she made an appearance on television in 2016.
Mm.
And I mean, good for her though, for
Mm-hmm.
doing what she wants, and that's writing, and that's what she always wanted. And
Oh, it was called Between. It was like a
uh,
sci-fi thriller. Yeah, it looks like it was 2 seasons, but
it's only 12 episodes, so
yeah, I had never heard of it. It was from 2015 to 2016, and it has a 3-star rating. So I'm glad that she didn't get stuck for a long time, but
yeah.
and one thing that made me really happy, what, because how you, it reminded me of the screenplay she wrote because I read this book a little while ago, so I had honestly forgotten about the screenplay part, but she probably does want to be a writer. And this book did so well that she ended up signing a 2-book deal with a different publisher. And I have no idea what those books are going to be about. I don't know if they're going to be fiction. I don't know if she's going to spill more tea on things behind the scenes in Hollywood or stories she's had, but I'm really excited about it and I'll read them, I bet.
I will too. At least one of the, if I don't like the first one, I probably won't read the second one, but I
Right.
liked this one, so I'll try the next one.
I
But
agree.
I also wanted to point out she recounts a lot of her life and specific memories, and I just think that's so amazing because I remember the gist of my life, but I don't remember a lot of specific memories in detail. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of amazed by that. Maybe she didn't always remember those things, though. Maybe part of healing unlocked some of it. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was I thought that was really interesting and cool that she was able to tell her story so detailed because I know I either don't remember or I'm blocking things out from my childhood, and it just gives me hope that we can all heal in our own way, in our own time, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. I do think that when she went to go get help for her drinking and her eating disorder, at least the first time, she wasn't ready to face the bigger picture, and it's hard to get sober and in recovery if you don't face the bigger picture, the reasons why those
Mm-hmm.
things are happening. So I hope, that she's healthy at least and happy. I know that she's done some interviews on this, and I know that Miranda had tried to get her to come back for the reboot, but I'm glad she didn't. I think it's
Yeah.
important for herself and her recovery, even though I'm sure some fans are disappointed. I think that the fans that really care about who she is as a person will understand if they read this book that it's not conducive to her her life and her mental health if she were to go back to that. So I'm glad that she stuck to her guns and
I
didn't
do
feel any
too,
pressure.
because they offered her a lot of money, if I recall, to do the reboot. And to say no to that couldn't have been easy,
Oh,
especially if you haven't worked in a while.
and we didn't talk about how when Sam and Cat ended, Nickelodeon tried to like give her like a severance and get her to sign that she wouldn't talk about anything that
The
had happened.
creator.
The creator
Mm-hmm.
essentially, but they put it over a blanket that she wouldn't talk about anything. But
Yep. And good
she
for
didn't
her
take
because I
that.
think it was like 300 or 400,000, something like that. And I'm sure she made way more with this book. So good. I'm glad she trusted herself.
Yeah, because that show ended a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost 10 years ago, Sam and Cat ended.
Mm-hmm.
In
Yep.
2014 it did. So I'm glad that
Good for her.
she knew that it was wrong, even if at the time she didn't have the plans to spill the tea, but she was able
Yeah,
to stick to her guns and do what she believed was right, which I do believe is right too.
I agree. I'm proud of her for doing the work that she deserves to heal herself and for being so open and honest with her story. And I just wanted to end with this list of things if you're dealing with a gaslighter or a narcissistic person. Just remember you are not responsible for someone else's behavior. Talk about what happened with someone you trust, whether that's a friend or a therapist. Journaling can help keep track of what actually happened and help you not get lost in your abuser's version of reality. And just make sure you keep it in a private place, um, especially if you live with your abuser. Remember, you'll never win a debate with this person because they're so convinced that they're right and they'll just talk circles around you. Keep a record of things that happen in case you ever do need to take legal action. And if things escalate to violence or verbal abuse, find a way out and don't be afraid to report things to the police because you don't have an obligation to keep anyone else's secrets or protect narcissists in your life. So be strong, people. You got this.
Yes, that's so important, and I'm so glad you said that. And I hope if there's anybody out there that has dealt with narcissists in the past, that you're able to, heal, and that if you're currently going through it, that it does get better and you will you won't always feel this bad and this
Mm-hmm.
hopeless, and it takes work and it's scary, and you may feel like you don't have any other choice but to stay with that person, but I promise it's hard, but once you get settled and situated on your feet, you will live the best life. And
Mm-hmm.
that's
You
what I hope
deserve
for
it.
everyone. Yeah, and that's what I hope
Mm-hmm.
for Jennette McCurdy. I hope she continues to write and share her stories, fact or fiction, with the world. And I'll be here for the content, for the tea that she decides to spill, whether, like I said, it's not true, because I love a good story.
I agree. Thanks for writing this book, Jeanette. It really was eye-opening and it was a great way to end our memoir madness.
It was. Thanks for narrating your own story. I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
important. I don't think it would have been as effective and heavy and helpful if somebody else had read her story. And I know that probably was very, very hard.
Yes, I can only imagine. It'd be like reading my diary out loud for people to hear.
And then
Very brave.
people to comment on or speculate about,
Mm-hmm.
or, people that you know, people you don't know, and that's really scary.
It is. Well, thank you for listening with us today and holding space for Jennette and yourselves. Like we said, I think a lot of people can relate to her stories and join us next week for all the tea we cannot sip.
Good night.
Bye.